This is Miles, still broadcasting, still surviving. This morning was different. Not colder, not darker, but quieter in a way that gouges the soul. I woke before the sun, if that word still means anything. No firestorms, no wind roaring through the broken pine. Just nothing. No shrill calls. No rustle in the branches above. No soft tap of claws on bark. Just the stillness of a world that forgot how to sing. The birds didn't return this time. For months they'd come in thinning lines, late migrations, ragged, gasping across poisoned skies. Each season, fewer. Each season, weaker. And now, no silhouettes against the sky. No calls trailing the sunrise. Only the long silence between pulses of this old transmitter and the scratch of my pen. They're gone. An extinction isn't a thunderclap. It's a slow breath that stops halfway and never exhales. You don't notice it until it's been gone too long to remember. I stood outside with my hand on the cold railing, listening for a song that didn't come. The air felt heavier, as if the sky itself were grieving. I used to wonder what the last sound on earth might be. A siren, a scream, the wind howling through empty towers. Now I know. It's silence, and the soft static of a voice still trying to reach someone in the dark. When I was a boy, my father taught me to listen before I ever learned to speak. He wasn't a man of many words, but he knew the birds, their names, their calls, their seasons. He kept a ledger in an old green notebook, its pages lined with scribbled maps and notes. First robin of spring, warbler nest behind the pump house, swallow pair returned. Early, we would sit on the cabin steps at dawn with thermoses of weak coffee and wait for the first sound. When the whip-poor-will sang, he'd close his eyes. When the owl called at dusk, he'd nod like it was proof the world was still turning. He used to say, "A sky without birds is a sky without a memory." I didn't understand him then. I do now. They weren't just creatures. They were the voice of the world remembering itself. Morning after morning, year after year, even when cities fell, the birds kept going. Even when markets crashed and water lines vanished, they called out at first light. And now, nothing. No sky map to follow, no calls to chase, only memory, only the ghosts of feathers pressed between the pages of a broken book. I wish my father had lived long enough to hear this silence, and I'm glad he didn't. It didn't happen overnight. The sky didn't blacken in one dramatic twist. The atmosphere died the way a throat closes during a slow drowning, bit by bit, cell by cell. First it was the ozone, the shield thinning above the southern corridors, then the northern peaks, holes yawning open above cities, invisible but deadly. Sunlight changed. It burned sharper. It etched cancers into skin like secrets written in ultraviolet ink. Then came the particulates, polymer dust rising from oceans boiling with synthetic decay, microscopic threads of clothing, of packaging, of forgotten convenience, climbing the troposphere, lodging themselves in clouds, in breath, in bloodstreams. The air grew dense with ghosts, not visible ones, not the romantic kind, ghosts made of exhaust and extinction, and the byproduct of everything we called progress. And with the air changed the insects. They died, first in clusters, collapse of pollinators, no bees, no beetles, no slow hum of moths under the moon. Without them, the flowers folded, the trees bore no fruit, the chain snapped, link by aching link. And what are birds, if not the singers of the chain? They needed the sky, they needed the insects, they needed the rhythm. We broke all three. I remember reading a paper once, back when there were papers, about atmospheric stratification, How warm layers of air trap cooler ones beneath, locking in pollutants like a lid. The scientists called it air that forgets how to breathe. That's what we live in now. A lid shut tight on a breathless planet. I filter my air through scavenged membranes and prayer. I change filters weekly if I can find them. I wake in the night coughing dust. And still I broadcast, because even a suffocating world deserves to be remembered. Especially then, something strange reached my receiver today. Not a voice, not words, just a tone, high, mechanical, repeating at odd intervals, weak, garbled, almost shy. I haven't picked up anything new in weeks. Not since the Chicago repeater went cold and the last coastal net fell silent. The grid is gone. Satellites blind or spinning dead. And yet this tone, this tiny, insistent rhythm, pierced through the snow like a thorn through cloth. It wasn't random. That's what struck me. 3 short beeps, 1 long pause, then a soft warble, like a chime cracked in half. Then silence. Then again. I adjusted the antenna, boosted the gain. Nothing changed. Still those pulses, still that rhythm. It sounded almost like a call. There's no origin signature, no modulation ID. If it's man-made, it's from a pre-grid analog. Something old, something persistent. If it's not man-made, then I don't know what it is. Could be a machine repeating a heartbeat long after its builders died. Could be a signal from another outpost, someone like me, wiring broken radios in the dark. Could be nothing. But tonight, for the first time in too long, I'm not the only sound in the static. If you're out there, whoever you are, keep transmitting, keep singing. Even if your song is made of circuits and memory, this is Miles. Frequency 13.104, still transmitting from the north perimeter of Zone 6. I walked through the old growth this morning, or what's left of it. A forest without leaves, without birds, without even the whisper of wings. Just bark peeled back by sunburn. Branches like broken ribs, and roots that reach into poisoned earth like forgotten fingers. These trees, once cathedral high, were mapped by bird songs, warblers nesting in the canopy, thrushes tucked behind moss and shadow, owls roosting in crooks that curved like cradles. Every tree used to hum with purpose. Now they creak like old floorboards in an empty house. I found a nest, or what used to be one. Twigs brittle as ash, no feathers, no shell fragments, just dust. A cradle that never rocked. What haunts me isn't what's missing. It's what the silence reveals. The sound of my own breath under the gas mask, the hiss of my water purifier, the soft crush of my boots where no prints are followed. There was a time when this zone was loud with life. I remember the chorus, layers upon layers. You didn't notice how rich it was until it stopped. Now I walk through skeletons of trees that once wore names. Names my father knew. Names I taught students. Names I can no longer bear to speak aloud. This is Miles. Still walking. Still listening for something that might never come back. I'm not the only one still talking. Tonight I have a voice besides my own. Naomi, former conservationist, once a farmer, now a refugee of silence. She patched in her transmission from the broken orchard belt west of the old floodplain. Her voice came through cracked, like a record left too close to flame. There are no worms, she said, no beetles, no rustle beneath the soil. I turned the earth with my hands, Miles, bare hands, and all I found was dust and root rot. She used to grow stone fruit, peaches, plums, apricots in spring. She remembered the hum of bees in blossom, the shimmer of heat lifting from black loam. Now her trees stand like gallows, each branch a question mark pointed at the sky. I remember when birds used to fight over the figs, she said. Now even the flies are gone. I asked her how she survived. She didn't answer. She just breathed, long and hollow, like someone remembering how. She sent me a photograph once of her orchard in bloom, before the rains turned caustic, before the groundwater curdled, before the sky stopped knowing its own season. The picture sits beside my transmitter now, a relic of a world that could once feed itself. Naomi ended her message with a whisper. I can't hear them anymore, the trees, the soil. It's like the land forgot its own language. I told her I'd keep broadcasting, that someone should speak, even if the earth no longer answers. Maybe we become the soil's memory now, its last breath, its fading dream. This is Miles, still transmitting, still answering in place of things that can't. The orchard isn't alone. Across the continent, the story is the same. Land that won't bear, rains that kill instead of nourish, and soil that remembers how to bloom, but no longer can. Let me break it down, the way I would have if the university still had a lecture hall, if the students still had somewhere to return to. Acid rain. It began slow, back in the fossil-rich century when sulfur dioxide danced skyward in celebration of profit. Then came nitrogen oxides from combustion, leaking into the clouds like poison in a baptismal font. Raindrops turned acidic. pH levels fell like guillotines, and when the rain burned, the roots shrank away. Microbial life died first, the foundation, the unseen, then the mycorrhizal webs, the fungal threads that connected tree to tree, broke like snapped violin strings. No more nutrient sharing, no more underground communication, just silence from crown to root tip. Then the worms vanished. Once they kept the soil breathing, airing it, folding it, digesting the rot and turning it to life again. But acid doesn't discriminate. It erases quietly, absolutely. And then the sterilization. There's a term, biotic collapse threshold, a tipping point when the loss of one key species cascades downward, spores don't germinate, seeds don't sprout, oxygen levels alter microscopically, it doesn't make the news, it doesn't roar, it just stops, and when the cycle stops, nothing returns. You can have rain, you can have sun, but if the soil sleeps, it won't wake for you. And yet, I still carry seeds, tucked in wax paper, stored like scripture, because even if they never sprout, someone should remember how to hold life gently. Naomi left behind more than words. She sent me a notebook, leather-bound, edges frayed, the pages weathered by ash and time. Inside, a list, names of birds, some written in Latin, some in common tongue, each one marked with a date, a place, and a final sighting. I read them aloud now, not as a record, but as a right. Northern Flicker, April 19th, last call heard in the Red Pine Grove, Sector 3, ruby-crowned kinglet, May 2nd window strike, found dazed, released, never returned, wood thrush, June 10th, singing even as the forest fell, page after page, species after species, a eulogy written not in marble but graphite. My voice cracked on the last name, not because it was rare, not because it was beautiful, but because it was once so common, I never learned to appreciate it. The common blackbird, gone. We always think there will be one more season, one more call, one more wing in the sky. And then there isn't. I was preparing to sign off when the static shifted. It wasn't the usual interference, no solar flare hum, no feedback loop. This was Melodic, a high-pitched warble, then a pause, then a trill, digital, glitched, but structured, familiar, a bird song, not from a throat, but from a circuit. Someone or something preserved it, maybe from Naomi's tapes, maybe from another archive beneath dust and collapse. It ended mid-note, cut off like breath caught in frost. Still, it played, and for a moment, the silence had a shape again. This is Miles. Still listening, still remembering, still here. This is Miles. Broadcasting now from the dust corridor east of the ash belt. Coordinates unstable. Wind direction, southerly, low visibility. Still here. I followed the old Survivor rail line today. Its tracks are mostly gone now, buried beneath sediment and memory. But sometimes, if you look closely, you'll see the faint parallel of steel. Rusted, half swallowed by time. They used to call it the spine, this stretch of track. It ferried people west during the early years, when the water still flowed and hope still rode in carriages wrapped in tarp and faith. Now it ferries nothing but wind. Ash drifts move like dunes here. I keep my mouth covered, my filters triple wrapped, but the grit still gets in. Behind the mask, I taste smoke that never fully died. The smell of old fire, of plastic and flesh and pine, gone to cinder. This whole place breathes like a ghost that doesn't want to be remembered. The silence along the rails is thick, interrupted only by the soft collapse of something beneath my step. An old signal box, maybe, or bones. Everything is buried here. History, machinery, people. You walk long enough and the wind starts to sound like footsteps that aren't yours. But I follow the tracks because they still lead somewhere. And sometimes, when the air is calm, I think I can hear the echo of an engine that isn't coming back. This is Miles. Still tracing paths others fled. Still hoping the end of the line isn't the end of the story. His name was Eli. A boy, maybe 10, maybe 12. Hard to tell now. They don't grow like they used to. He didn't speak at first. Just watched me from behind a shattered signal post. His eyes bright and wary. Like an animal learning how to trust again. He held something in his hands. A glass jar, sealed with wax, edges blackened with age. Inside it, just one white feather. Pristine, untouched. It floated slightly as he moved, suspended like it was still waiting for the wind to come back. I asked him where he found it. He didn't answer, just held it tighter, as if naming it would make it vanish. Some part of me wanted to tell him it was meaningless, that it was just keratin and calcium dust. This world, feathers don't fly anymore. They fall, and they're forgotten. But I didn't, because he believed it meant something. And maybe that's what we're doing now, carrying pieces of a vanished world, not because they're useful, but because they remind us we were once more than survivors. He shared a fire with me that night, ate dried roots, sipped filtered melt from my pack. We didn't speak much, but I noticed he slept with the jar beside him, like it was sacred. Maybe it is. This is Miles, still following the broken rails, still believing in the strange things children keep alive. Before I slept, I queued up an old memory log. Dr. Lena Reyes, virologist, field ecologist, voice like paper on fire, fragile but relentless. She recorded this message years ago, maybe 10, maybe more. I've lost track of how long the world's been unraveling. If birds vanish, she said, the air changes. Not just metaphorically, literally. Birds aren't just singers or pollinators or reminders of freedom. They were regulators, bioindicators. They moved fungal spores, filtered insect blooms, transported microbial balance between ecosystems. Their absence didn't just leave an emptiness in the trees, it left a wound in the lungs of the world, and into that wound crept something else. Airborne fungi, once kept in check by migration patterns and seasonal nesting, began to bloom unchecked. Spores that never used to survive high humidity now did. The ones that used to die in UV thrived under dust-filtered skies. Dr. Reyes called it clade sigma, a new genus of mycotoxins spread by wind, absorbed through breath and skin. It didn't kill like a virus. It undermined. Slowly, quietly, it weakened immune systems, disrupted hormonal balance. Children began to waste. Adults coughed black threads in their sleep. Organ failure wasn't sudden. It was gradual, like being unraveled strand by strand. The kicker? It wasn't weaponized. It wasn't engineered. It was just the absence of balance. She ended the transmission like this. The birds didn't take the disease with them. We created the space for it to grow. I listen to that log when I forget why I wear 3 layers of filters, when my breath feels shallow, when the boy beside me coughs once and I freeze. We keep thinking the end of the world will be fire and flood, but sometimes it's just a cough that won't stop. This is Miles, still breathing, still filtering air like it's scripture, still alive. He woke me with a scream. Eli, eyes wide, hands clutched to the jar like it was the last light in the world. I asked what he saw. He said it was flying, but it was on fire. A bird, he meant, wings outstretched, glowing, falling. He said it came from the north through the smoke and vanished into the sky again like a comet. But it wasn't a comet, he was sure. He swore it had feathers. I tried to tell him it was a dream, just a fevered mind mixing memory and firelight, but he wouldn't let it go. His voice trembled, not with fear, but awe. It looked back at me, he whispered. I didn't argue, not because I believed him, but because I wanted to. We all want to believe something still flies, that not everything has been grounded, that some winged thing still survives above the storms and ash. Maybe he saw a flare drone. Maybe it was static burned into his dreams. But what if the last bird didn't die? What if it just left us? I watched the sky long after he fell asleep again. The stars are mostly gone now, blotted by haze. But I still looked. This is Miles, still wondering, still watching skies we thought were empty. This is Miles. Frequency 13.104, still operational, still broadcasting from somewhere between memory and ash. Last night, I caught something on the deep band, a looped signal, low frequency, modulated like it was meant to be hidden. It wasn't chatter, no voice, no distress call, just a soft pulse, followed by a fragment of old identification code, BWP-3A. It took me half the night to remember. Blackwing Protocol, a rumor, mostly, government project from the collapse's first decade. Something about species preservation, avian DNA sent off-world, or locked in underground databanks, depending on who you asked. The coordinates embedded in the signal pointed to an old relay outpost, Communications Tower 7D, deep in the ash belt, east of the refinery line. Took me a day to get there, 2 filters, 3 canisters of meltwater, half a ration. The tower was gone, just bones of steel and shattered ceramic. But underneath, beneath the grating, under a rusted hatch, I found a staircase that didn't end in dust. I don't know what I expected. Answers maybe, or just another locked room full of broken promises. Instead, I found something that still hummed. Low, rhythmic, alive. A bunker, sealed once, now gasping open like a lung that forgot how to breathe. I'm inside now. The walls are cold. The air is chemical. But something in here still remembers how to wait. This is Miles. Still going deeper, still following echoes the world forgot to erase. The moment the door sealed behind me, it felt like I'd stepped inside a mausoleum built for memory. Dim lights flickered from ceiling tracks, failing capacitors, or perhaps motion sensors too stubborn to die. The air held the scent of synthetic preservation, filtered and stale. My boots echoed across tile once polished, now webbed with decay. Rows of tanks lined the chamber, transparent, cracked, each one a vault of what we used to call future, avian embryos, frozen in developmental pause, wrens, finches, jays, warblers, species long extinct, outside this steel tomb. Most of the canisters had failed. Condensation dripped along fractures. Black mold bloomed inside some. Others, empty. Markers smudged. IDs wiped away like names forgotten too long. A monitor blinked to life as I passed. No greeting, no welcome. Just a looping holograph of a meadow, and the sound of bird song overlaid in gentle repetition. A lullaby. It wasn't music. It was training audio, designed to stimulate neural activity in early avian development. The idea, I remembered, was that even unborn birds might respond to ancestral sounds, learn to fly before the world woke them. But the tape was warped, the melody cracked, skipping in soft static, a song playing for ears that never opened. Some machine still beeped, still ticked, still pumped, like they believed the war was still out there, and they were still guarding something worth saving. I sat for a while, just listening to the lullaby meant for no one. This is Miles, still inside the silence, still walking through what we thought was preservation and what now feels like grief. I stood in that lab and asked a question I never thought to speak aloud. Did we ever truly love the birds, or did we love the idea of them? The songs, the symbols, the illusion of freedom. We framed them in poems, named storms after them, painted them on the walls of our cities like charms against forgetting. But love requires presence, not just observation, not just containment. Love feeds, defends, makes room. Let's fly. We cataloged them, tracked their migrations with satellites. We built aviaries and drone-flown nests. We simulated their calls in shopping malls. But when the air grew hot and the trees too still, did we stop? We measured their decline. We plotted extinction on graphs. We built labs like this, cold, clinical, full of hope, but void of reverence. Somewhere along the line, preservation became possession. We didn't want the birds. We wanted the idea of being the kind of species that deserved them. Maybe this protocol wasn't built for the birds at all. Maybe it was built to spare us the shame of having killed them, to give the future a file folder instead of a feather. I look at these tanks now, at frozen yolks and dormant genes, and I don't know whether to weep or bow. This isn't resurrection, it's deferral, a hope buried in refrigeration, waiting for a world that might never thaw. This is Miles, still questioning, still trying to separate memory from ownership, still wondering what we actually meant to save. I was almost out the door when the signal caught me, just a flicker at first. One of the lab's old terminals rebooting after my motion past it. A corrupted file surfaced, tagged with a simple label, a Lauda Arvensis vocal fragment. The Skylark, last recorded near Devon, 10 years before the air turned bitter. I played it. The sound was cracked, clipped by digital rot, but it sang, not in full melody, not like it would have in open fields under morning sun, but enough. Enough to pull breath from my lungs and stillness from the room. A single phrase, 3 rising notes, one falling, then again, then static, then silence. It wasn't much, but it was a voice from before the silence, a thread of sound that stretched backward into a world that once woke to that call and called it normal. I stood there, not breathing, afraid even my heartbeat would corrupt the moment. We may have lost the birds, but not all of their echoes. Some songs remain, tucked into circuits, buried in dead databases, carried on pulses of forgotten code. I downloaded the file, transferred it to my core transmitter. It will play again, somewhere, for someone, because silence doesn't get to have the last word. Not while there's even one fragment left that still knows how to rise and fall. This is Miles, still singing with what remains, still recording the notes of a world that may yet be heard again, still broadcasting, always. This is Miles. Frequency 13.104, still transmitting through static and dust, still breathing through triple-layered filters that used to be optional, now sacred. There was a time when balance wasn't a metaphor, it was an ecology, a net of checks and counterweights spun in feather and tooth and root. When the birds vanished, it didn't feel immediate. It felt like grief does, slow, then sudden, then everything at once. We thought the silence was the worst of it. We were wrong. With no hawks to haunt the hedgerows, no kestrels to patrol the fields, the rodents came back, not in handfuls, in floods. They multiplied in the gutters, in abandoned greenhouses, in cracked grain vaults, and flooded transit tunnels. And with them came teeth, sharp and relentless, chewing through cable, crop, insulation, and seed. It wasn't just food they devoured. They carried pathogens too, old ones buried in their genomes, plague strains that had slept for decades, waiting for a warmth that wouldn't come from the sun. We saw it first in the camps, families crammed into underground markets, and burnt-out hospitals. A fever, then bruising, then rot. No vaccine held, because the vector kept changing, kept learning. They weren't just pests. They were carriers of evolution. Disease learning how to walk again. And without birds, there were no biobarriers left. The insects exploded too. Locusts, mites, weevils, populations once preyed upon, now unchecked. They stripped leaves from trees in hours. They burrowed into stored grain, turned reserves into dust. That's the thing about extinction. Its echo isn't quiet. It's louder than collapse. People kept asking, when did it all fall apart? And I keep answering, when the birds stopped keeping watch. This is Miles, still counting teeth in the soil, still mourning wings that once kept hunger tethered to the ground. There's a man east of the sun fields, name's Grant, used to work salvage. Now he lives behind a collapsed fueling station with walls made from refrigerator doors and solar blankets. He makes things, quiet things, traps, mostly, rat snares wired from rusted bed springs, solar dehydrators that dry roots and moss into edible dust, devices built to last exactly long enough to matter. When I arrived, he didn't ask questions, just handed me a tin cup and pointed to a bench that creaked like old wood but held. We shared what little heat the day had left. He talked more than I did. Said he used to keep birds once, finches tiny and mean, but he let them go when the feed ran out. I still hear them sometimes, he said. Not here. He tapped his temple. Down there, and tapped the floor. I asked him what he meant. He said the rats make noise. but not random, not just teeth and claws. They talk, he told me, to each other, to the dark. I swear they've learned rhythm. I didn't laugh. I've lived long enough to know madness is just another kind of tuning fork. Sometimes it hums with truth. Grant works by daylight, charges batteries from salvaged panels he angles with the sun. By night, he listens, keeps a tape recorder from before the fall, reels polished, head still clean, says it catches things our ears miss. He doesn't know what he's looking for anymore. Maybe none of us do, but he's still building, still listening, and that counts for something. This is Miles, still finding signals in the broken places, still grateful for those who tinker in silence. We sat in quiet for a long time, me and Grant, the kind of quiet that isn't absence but density, the kind that fills a room like smoke. He said the silence above bothered him more than the noise below, said storms used to feel bigger when birds wheeled ahead of them, warned you, shadowed the wind. When the crows rose, you knew something was coming. Now weather just arrives, unannounced, like a thief in a chapel. I knew what he meant. There's a hollowness in the sky now, like a ceiling stripped of stars. Even thunder doesn't carry right. Sound doesn't echo the same without wings to push against it. You start to realize birds were punctuation. They ended dawn. They marked rain. They filled the blank spaces with song. Without them, the world is one long sentence that never breathes. Grant pointed up at the empty blue and said, "It's not just quiet. It's wrong." I didn't argue. The sky no longer sings, and maybe the earth doesn't either. I carry old recordings in my pack. Thrush, oriole, wren. I play them sometimes. Not because I think they'll come back, but because I want the wind to remember. Sometimes I think silence is our inheritance. But memory? That's still ours to share. This is Miles, still echoing what the wind forgot, still humming what the sky left behind. When I left, Grant handed me a cassette. Said it wasn't his. Said it recorded itself. He found it 2 weeks ago. The recorder had been on for hours. Battery near dead. No one touched it. No one pressed record. It just began, alone in the dark. I played it once I cleared the ridge. At first, nothing but static. The usual hum of old tape, stretched and decayed. Then something faint. A sound almost like metal tapping, but softer, repeating. Then it came again, a chirp, then two, then a trill that rose in thirds and fell flat. Unmistakable, birdsong, but twisted, glitched, as if the wind had learned it phonetically, as if the tape remembered what the world had forgotten. Wasn't from a throat. I know that. But it wasn't noise either. I played it 5 more times, slowed it, reversed it, listened for the pattern. It was there. It wasn't imitation. It was reconstruction. Something in that place, maybe through vibration, maybe sheer proximity, recorded an echo of what once was. Grant said, maybe the rats remember. Maybe the earth itself is singing back. Maybe. Maybe memory is molecular. Maybe extinction leaves a fingerprint in the frequencies. Maybe, just maybe, we haven't lost it all. I'm taking the tape with me. I'll rebroadcast the fragment. Not today, but soon. Let it ride the airwaves. Let it find ears still willing to believe. Because even if no bird sings again, that doesn't mean the song is lost. This is Miles, still archiving wonder, still threading reels into broken machines, still broadcasting, always. This is Miles, broadcasting beneath the ruins of what used to be old Berlin. Above me, the bones of a city that once named stars and species alike. below me, memory sealed in sediment and silence. I've arrived at what remains of the Natural History Museum, once the largest in this part of the world. Now it's just a crown of collapsed stone and shattered skylights, half swallowed by the ash belt. From a distance, it looked like a sunken cathedral, the kind where knowledge prayed and dust was the final congregation. They called this place the Ark, back when optimism still fit inside buildings, not for people, for sounds, for birdsong, not preserved in jars or tanks, but in spools of tape, recordings of species long gone, stored not for study but survival. The upper floors are gone. Time and temperature did their work, but the basement, still intact, hidden beneath layers of debris and time, I found the passage. There's a corridor, reinforced and humming, faint power, faint warmth, and at the end, behind a door made heavier by history, something waits. Not alive, but not quite dead. I'm entering now. Signal may dip. If I drop off for a while, wait for me. Some echoes don't like to be heard alone. I'm inside now. The space is vast, colder than I expected, though not lifeless. There's breath here, not biological, not mammalian, magnetic, audible, intentional. This is a sound lab, or rather, a sanctuary. I met them, those who stayed, engineers, archivists, not young, not naive, each face lined with the kind of memory that doesn't need photographs to stay sharp. They didn't greet me with words. They pointed to the walls, reel-to-reel machines 10 deep, shelves of tapes, some still labeled, most only numbered. Humidifiers buzz in the corners to keep the air dry enough to preserve, but not brittle enough to erase. Here they rebuild songs, not from notation or recollection, but from degradation, snippets of warbles, fragmented coos, the crackle of wren calls buried beneath field recordings from 50 years ago. They thread them through restoration software run on solar-charged backups, filtered through layers of noise reduction and analog filters. It's painstaking, it's imperfect, it's holy. They call themselves the choir. I asked them why they stayed, why they chose to resurrect voices instead of building shelters or rationing food. One woman, her name stitched in red thread as Vera, answered softly, because someone has to remember how joy sounded. That hit hard. This place doesn't chase survival. It honors presence. What birds gave us was not just pollination or pest control. They gave us expression. The world's first music wasn't made by human hands. It was written in feathered lungs and hollow bones. And even though those lungs are still now, their echoes remain. On tape, in rust, in devotion, here ghosts sing. And in the act of listening, we become more than witnesses. We become accompaniment. This is Miles, humbled, and reminded that even extinction doesn't erase everything. Not if someone chooses to remember. We gathered tonight. No formal signal, no bell, just the turning of a dial, and people came. Dozens of them. Most in patched jackets and filter masks hung around their necks like old jewelry. Each one carried a lamp, hand-cranked, dim, light enough to glow, not enough to interrupt. No one spoke. They didn't need to. The language here isn't verbal. They sat in folding chairs lined before an old multi-speaker array, once used for teaching, now a choir loft. And then they played it, the reconstructed call of a warbler. It wasn't perfect, fragments spliced from 3 decades of damaged audio, but it rose, warbled, danced across frequencies, filled the room with something that felt older than pain, and for a moment, no one was hungry. No one was cold. No one was exiled from the world that made them. I watched them, not as a journalist, not even as a witness, just as someone trying not to forget how to feel. There's something about hearing a bird song in silence that breaks you open. It doesn't ask for applause. It just fills the absence. I didn't record it. Some things aren't meant for transmission. Some things are meant to live only in the ears that stayed. This is Miles, still learning the difference between sound and signal, still grateful for the ones who choose to sit in the dark and listen. After the gathering ended, Vera handed me a small drive. One track, no label. She said only this: play it where the silence is loudest. So I came back to the transmitter. Let the fans hum. Let the console warm beneath my palms. Let the static settle. And then I played it. The call of a thrush. Not simulated, not spliced. A single file recovered from a backup tape buried in lead casing since the first floods. Unbroken, crisp, a clear rising flute note. Then a pause. Then the answering trill. Alive. And in that moment, just a moment, I wasn't alone. I felt it. In the chest. In the breath. In the part of me that still believes in sky. I didn't speak for nearly a minute. Couldn't. The sound reached some unarmored place I didn't know I still carried. I cried. Not because it was sad, because it wasn't. It was beautiful, pure, as if the earth had sent a message through time, untouched by collapse, unspoiled by fire or famine. Just song. I let it loop once, then again, then a third time, so the air could memorize it. And then I spoke. This is Miles, still broadcasting, still breaking, and still being rebuilt, one note at a time. May this thrush find you in the dark. May it remind you what it means to feel alive. Still here, still singing, still listening. This is Miles, still broadcasting, and higher now than I've ever been in my life. The Himalayas were once a place people came to find themselves. Now I come to look for something that may never have existed. An echo, a feather, a myth. They say the Himalayan snowcock might still survive in the upper glaciers. Not many believe it. I barely do myself. But when everything else has fallen silent, even a rumor becomes reason enough to move. The air here is thin. Every breath feels like a negotiation. The cold bites without malice, without pause. It just is. I ration my oxygen, 70-second intervals. In between, I count my heartbeat to stay calm. Sometimes I hallucinate birdsong, tucked into the wind like thread inside cotton. The trees gave up kilometers ago. No more green. Just rock, snow, and silence. It's the kind of quiet that feels alive. Like the mountain is listening back. The climb taxes more than muscle. It demands belief. Not faith in survival. I know better than to expect that. But belief in possibility. That something still moves out here. That not every wing has been folded forever. This is Miles. Still climbing. Still chasing the edge where breath disappears. And maybe something else appears in its place. As I ascend, her name arrives like it always does. Lyra, my sister, photographer, ornithologist, voice like wind chimes on a balcony, no one tended anymore. She disappeared 7 years ago. Her last transmission came from this range, north face, between two rivers that no longer run. She was following the migration of the last alpine birds. She said they flew higher than anyone expected. She said they remembered paths older than names. Her final message was static-laced, her voice crackling through wind. They're going up, Miles. Farther than I thought. Maybe farther than we deserve to follow. Then she was gone. She always believed the birds would outlast us, that they had the sense to leave before collapse reached its crescendo. She believed in refuge, in the possibility that something somewhere was still unbroken, that maybe the sky would shelter those who listened closely enough. I didn't follow her then. I was too angry, too rooted in ruined cities and dry science. But now, as the cold peels away the layers of grief, I realize she wasn't chasing birds. She was chasing continuity, a thread of life uncut by our extinction. I see her face in every frozen gust, hear her laughter when the wind changes direction, and I keep walking because maybe she found something up here, or maybe she became part of it. This is Miles, still climbing in her footsteps, still hoping memory can leave a trail worth following. The summit greeted me with nothing, no movement, no sound, no wing beat in the wind, just glacier, cracked and gleaming, like a blind eye turned to the sun. I stood at the peak, lungs trembling, every part of me begging to turn back. But something held me, something below the surface. About 30 meters from the crest, half buried in drift and time, I saw the edge of a strap. Black nylon, frayed. I dug with gloved fingers until the pack came loose. The logo had long since faded. The zippers were stuck. Next to it, a camera, old model, DSLR, weather sealed, cold as bone. I knew it before I turned it over. The little blue sticker she used to mark her gear, half torn, but still clinging to the side like a stubborn fingerprint. Lyra's. The battery was dead. Of course it was. But the memory card was intact. I tucked it into my thermopad, warmed it for hours, then slipped it into my portable viewer and prayed. And there she was, frozen in a single frame, standing on the very ridge I now straddled, laughing into a wind that no longer blows the same, her hood down, cheeks red from the cold, camera in hand. Behind her, the glacier sweeping wide and vast. I paused the image, let it fill my screen, my eyes, and then I noticed, in the sky, above her shoulder, just a blur, something, not cloud, not sun flare, something with symmetry, with form, suspended in air, just out of reach. Not proof, but not nothing either. This is Miles, still holding the weight of a camera that saw something we weren't meant to forget. I watched the footage, every second of it. Lyra narrating, pointing out lichen, smiling at nothing, describing patterns in the snow as if the earth were still writing poems for anyone willing to read them. The last 20 seconds, her voice faltered, not from fear, from awe. "It's circling," she whispered. "It hasn't landed. It doesn't need to. It's just watching." The camera shook slightly, zoomed, caught it just once, barely in frame, wings outspread, larger than expected, feathers, yes feathers, rippled at the tips, then it vanished behind a white flare. She never turned off the camera. The feed cut when the battery died, and I cried again, not for the proof, not for the mystery, but because she wasn't chasing extinction. She was bearing witness to survival. In the world we've made, collapsed, burnt, thinned to ash, something still flew. And she saw it, and she smiled. Maybe she followed it. Maybe that's what she meant in her final message. "They're going up, Miles." Maybe she did too. I'll carry the footage with me now. Share it when the time is right. Not because I need others to believe, but because belief isn't always the point. Sometimes it's enough just to remember that someone once saw something that didn't die. That in a sky gone hollow, there was still one shape left unbroken. This is Miles, still broadcasting from the edge of what we thought was the end, still climbing, still grieving, still looking up. Back in the bunker, back where the concrete walls don't breathe, but they still hold. Back where the hum of my generator is the only heartbeat left in this end of the world. I've lit the projector. The bulb stutters a little as if it too remembers what light used to mean. I've fed in the memory card, the one I carried down from the mountain like an ember cupped in both hands. And there she is, Lyra, my sister, standing on a ridge of white and silence. The wind moves through her hair, unbraided. Her smile is imposed. It rises from something inside her, something untouched by ruin. She looks past the lens toward a sky that still meant something. Her voice is barely audible, filtered through thin oxygen and static. But I know what she says. I don't need the sound. I lived in that voice once. She lifts her camera. She points to the horizon. She murmurs, "It's still up there." And behind her, the blur. That same winged shape. A curve of movement where no bird should be. It drifts like a breath, impossible and unshaken. I freeze the frame. There is no proof here. Only presence. Only the sacred shape of possibility. I let the real play through again. Then again, until the generator flickers and I know I'm draining more power than I can afford. But I can't look away, because this is not a record of survival. It is a record of faith. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind that keeps going when no one's listening. This room is full of ghosts, some of them mine, some of them hers, and some that never belonged to either of us, just memories of feathers, of wind, of songs the sky hasn't finished singing. Tonight, I'm not just transmitting. I'm composing, not with notes or bars, not with structure, with fragments, with the leftovers of a world we broke and tried to grieve. First, I let the thrush sing, the restored call, recovered from a decaying tape in the archive below Berlin. It loops once, rises, pauses, falls, and the bunker seems to breathe with it. My hands tremble when it plays, but I don't stop it. Next comes the synthetic bird song, the one Grant gave me, captured by a recorder that wasn't turned on. Artificial, but deliberate. Its pitch stumbles, then steadies. Like a child learning to speak in an extinct language. It doesn't sound natural, but it tries. Then, my sister's laughter. The last few seconds of her camera's memory. A laugh that comes from the belly, rising through cold air. Not because she saw something funny, because she saw something she couldn't explain. And it made her alive, in a way the world hadn't let her feel in years. Together they make a symphony, a thrush that once sang in the dusk, a machine remembering how to imitate a bird, and a woman laughing at the edge of extinction. I don't speak over them. I let them carry the transmission, because this is what remains of us, not ruins, not data, reverence, what we chose to record, what we fought to preserve, what we still whisper into antennas that may never hear back. I don't know who's listening anymore, maybe no one, but I believe in echoes, and I believe in the holiness of sound. So I sent this into the dark. One song that lived, one song that tried, and one laugh that refused to die. This is Miles, still composing what memory alone cannot hold. This may be my last full transmission. The solar buffer's down to 7%. One of the inverters buzzed earlier. Wrong frequency. Could be a capacitor. Could be the bunker just deciding it's tired. Like everything else. I don't blame it. There's a crack in the eastern wall. I can feel the cold pressing through like breath. But I'm not afraid. Not tonight. Tonight, I feel still. I've said much over the months. Maybe too much. Maybe not enough. I've spoken about extinction, about memory, about the terrible shape of silence. I've mourned things that never got proper funerals. I've whispered names I never had the courage to say aloud before this all began. But here's what I believe now at the end of all these frequencies. The world didn't die all at once. It hid. Pieces of it tucked themselves into reels and voices and feathers buried in frost. And those who cared enough to listen, really listen, we became its archive. We are not the survivors. We are the stewards of its echo. And maybe that's what it means to be human now. Not to conquer, not even to endure, but to remember with reverence, to hold what slipped away and say you mattered. So if this is the last time my voice makes it through the static, let it be known. You're listening to the radio as the last bird falls from the sky, or maybe as it learns to fly again. And if that bird exists, if that shape my sister saw was real, if even one wing still cuts the sky, then let this frequency be its trail. Follow the signal, follow the song. This is Miles Harrington, still broadcasting, still breathing, still believing. May the silence you hear after this be filled with flight.